Welcome, and thank you for joining our webinar on viewing the latest feature releases for Salesforce. My name is Ali Pokalnis, and I will help facilitate our webinar today. Before we get started, here are a few tips on using the Zoom platform so you can engage with our presenters and have the best experience possible. Next slide. You should see a Zoom toolbar with icons for Ask a Question and Raise Your Hand. Please use the Ask a Question feature to submit a question or comment. If you need any assistance, click on the Raise Your Hand button and I will connect with you to help. We encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation, and we will do our best to answer them all at the end. If we didn't answer your question, we will follow up with you personally after the presentation. Next slide. If you experience audio issues, you can access your audio settings and test your audio when you are already in the meeting. At the bottom left-hand corner of the Zoom meeting toolbar, you'll find either the headphone or microphone logo to join audio or mute unmute. Click Join Audio to choose to connect your computer audio or dial into the meeting with a phone. Once your audio is connected, click Mute to disable the audio or unmute to enable your audio. Within 72 hours of the webinar, you will receive a link to download the slide deck and recorded presentation. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to our presenters, Turner Jones and Mark Foreman.
Hi, my name is Mark Foreman, and I have about 10 years of experience working on the Salesforce platform. At least half of that time I've spent as an instructor teaching Salesforce, both virtually like this and in person, for over 1,000 people on 3 continents and at least 15 different states. So you are likely in good hands for this webinar. I've been in Armanino for about 318 days, but that includes today. Luckily for us, we also have Turner Jones helping bring you the Spring 23 release webinar. Turner, take it away.
Thanks, Mark. Great to have everybody today. So my name is Turner Jones. I lead the Salesforce delivery here at Armanino. I've got a lot of experience in the tech industry, and I actually came out of public accounting, so I am a CPA as well.
Thanks, Turner. So this session is going to be all about the Spring 23 release. The good news is after this session, you will know even more about Salesforce capabilities than you do right now. And the even better news is we will be doing another one of these in 4 months because, well, it will be the summer 23 release. But for now, as they say, let's spring into action. Okay, so why are we here? Have fun, yes, but mostly so that you will know at least 10 new features that are in the Salesforce Spring 23 release. Of course, there are way more than 10 new features, but we don't have enough time to cover all of them. It's over 500 pages, so I picked out the 10 that were easiest to cover. No, scratch that. I mean the 10 that I think you will most likely want to use. And by knowing that they exist and how they can be used, you will likely use them. Some of these are so good, you'll probably think, I can't believe it wasn't in Salesforce yet. I know, crazy, right? So as we cover my top 10, it will be split into 2 groups of 5, which you will see when we get to the all-important agenda slide next. As we cover each new feature, I will also demonstrate what it is like to use the new feature in a real live Salesforce demo org. Since I'm experienced, it won't be dangerous. So if you are ready, as they say, let's get this party started with a couple of poll questions. Alexander, do we need to do something, or can you see the questions now? There we go.
So the first question is, how much experience do you have on the Salesforce platform? Nice. So it's nobody's first time here, so that's great, but we've got a good spread.
All right, we'll move on to the second question. Let's see, there we go.
And then this is some OG Salesforce knowledge. So what year was Salesforce founded? So it was 1999.
Yeah, so the reason that question is kind of interesting is because 3 releases a year for what, 24 years, that's almost 100. It would be, if you were counting. All right, so here it is, the agenda. The first half, we will cover more user-focused features. And for those of you that care about such things, that's an image of the Spring 23 logo. So the first 5 new features we will cover are the ability to import contacts and leads with a guided experience, the ability to subscribe to even more reports and dashboards now, the ability to have personalized report filters, the dynamic activity composer, and the last of the user focus are you can now use collections for reports and dashboards. I will have more to say on each topic as we cover them. The second half of our agenda, ironically, the logo is the same. Some of these new features are in beta or have been in beta before, but they are worth covering because they are associated with other functionality that's going away, such as permissions on a profile, process builder and workflow, or associated with functionality that is now being rolled out to even more objects. So these are the topics that we will cover in the second half when we talk about the more admin-focused new features. All right, so on to the first half, the Salesforce user-focused. Here is the first one. Now, sales reps can use a guided process that will allow them to import contacts and leads that use a CSV file and a simple data mapping user interface, or UI. So if you're an admin, you will be able to enable this feature in setup by turning on the basic data import. You can see this in the image at the very top of the slide. This feature will apply only to Lightning experience in a professional or enterprise edition within the Salesforce Sales Cloud. But because I'll be using a developer or a demo org, we won't have that capability. So we'll just look at the slides for this one feature. And since these images are kind of small at the bottom, let's dive a little deeper into them. And so these are what you would see if you were logged in to Salesforce and you enabled this feature. So if a user attempts to load leads or contacts, they will be given a choice to use the standard data import wizard, the one that we have today, or this new guided process, which is that first screen image. So you can see at the top, it says import from a file. Using the guided process, that's the new one. And down below, if you want to just use the old data import wizard, you click on this guy right there. In the second screen image, there will be you can either drop a file into the white area on the screen or click on the upload files button and then select your CSV file. So over here, you can either drag a file into this section or using the upload button, go find a CSV file on your desktop and then that will upload that file. It's important that you have a column with data in it for all the required fields. This is just normal, data loading into Salesforce, that if you're loading a record, every field that's required needs to have a value when you're trying to import it. So assuming no custom required fields, then as you can see, like for a lead, from the image that it will tell you that each lead must have a last name and a company name, and the CSV file must have the .csv extension on it. Right, so it's kind of telling you that right here. The last step before importing is to match the columns in the CSV file with the Salesforce fields. Not all columns in the spreadsheet need to be matched, meaning you can have 10 columns and only use 3 of them. And not all fields in Salesforce need to be matched because because you can, unless the field's required, it doesn't have to have a value. So on the Salesforce side, you only need to worry about the required fields to match. Once all the required fields are matched and any identified errors, it'll tell you what the error is, are resolved, then you will get this blue import button. This guy will turn blue right here when all of the errors are resolved and all the required fields are matched. Once you click on the import, this button right here, then you will get an email notifying you that the import's completed, and the email address that the email will be sent to is you, the person who's running this guided process. Right, so that's what this feature looks like if you were to look inside Salesforce from looking at the screenshots. All right, users now on the second feature will get a more actionable reports and dashboards delivered right to your inbox on schedule and with the latest data. But why? Because now in the in the Unlimited Edition org, you'll be able to subscribe up to 15 reports and 15 dashboards. Previously, the limit was only 7 reports and 7 dashboards. So this increase is actually more than double. For those of you who do not know what a report or dashboard subscription is, let's cover that real quickly. So here I am in the Salesforce demo org, and I'm on the reports tab. And in here, you can see I have a listing of the recent reports. Over here, there's a column that shows which reports I'm actually subscribed to. Looks like none, but over in this dropdown, I can click on subscribe. And in the edit subscription, you can set it up to be run daily or weekly or monthly. If I choose daily, then it says at what time. If I choose weekly, you're choosing which days of the week that you want it to run. And if you're choosing monthly, you get a couple different options here. You can run it specifically on a specific date or the last day of a month, which is only 28 for this month. Or you can even use relative dates like the first Monday of the month or the last Friday of the month, and at what time. You also can attach a file that goes with that report when it gets sent. It will send it to you when it runs, plus you can add other recipients to receive it. And when the report is run, you can be based on your access to the data or based on another user's permission. So different users may have access to different records, so the results of the report may be different based on who the report is run as, depending on how your security is set up in your Salesforce org. You also can add conditions when you subscribe to a report that says, only run this report and send it to me when these conditions are true. So it will run, but until this condition is true, it won't actually send you a copy of it. And you can either send it a summary or a summary and the report. Right, so this is a subscription that when you set it up to run, let's not add a condition here. You'll see that it shows you the subscription right here, that this one is a subscribe report. And what we now have in Spring 23 is the ability to do up to 15 per user, not the 7 that we had before. And this is applicable to dashboards as well. All right, by the way, you no longer have to be in the dark about, if you're an admin, about which reports, dashboards, and other analytic assets, which we'll look at a little bit later, your users are subscribed to if you're an admin, because you can actually create a report based off of a report type on the analytics notifications object. So you can see in your org, now that we get up to 15 different subscriptions, you may want to know who subscribed to which reports, what attachments are they sending, who's the running user. So you can create reports off of a custom report type that allows you to have insight as to what subscriptions are in the reporting or dashboard area within my org. So that's feature 2. In feature 3, now you can easily set up report filtering that presents the results in a more personalized way with the use of the value $user. This is a setting that would allow you to filter on any user field. In other words, a field that is actually a lookup to the user object. Owner fields are the most common use case that we think of as a lookup to a user object, but there are many others, including custom fields that could be a lookup to the user object, like sales rep maybe. So when you select the relative value of $user, the filtering will be dynamic to the user running the report. So how do you do this? Well, when setting up a filter on a user field, such as say opportunity owner or account owner created by, select the use relative value option. That's this guy right here. So if you click on this, it changes it to be $user. Then when the report runs, in this case, it would show you all the cases where you are the owner, you, the person running the report. Makes it dynamic. So in the first image, you can see there's a, the toggle switch and sets it to the $user. If you choose use custom value, it'll remove the $user. So let's take a look at that. If I go into and edit this report, so I'm inside the report editor. I'm going to look at the filter. If I click on the add filter, say of a user lookup field, like say the owner field, that's a lookup to the user object, you'll see that I can then use this relative value. So clicking on that adds a $user. The $user represents the person who's logged in running the report. And so then this would filter it and show me only the account that I'm the owner of. It allows the report to be dynamic so that anyone can run the report and have it be relevant to them. Or you can remove that by re-clicking on use custom value. And then you can put whatever you want in here. All right. And the next topic within the user-focused features is, remember, for those of you who can picture the page layout, the different tabs you would see in the activity composer. Well, maybe you don't need to use those tabs anymore. And the reason is because with this new release, reps can create activities quicker using buttons. No more need for actions in the drop-down menu when you can easily just visually see and click on a button. For example, the email drop-down, or even here in the task drop-down, you if there's more than one, you can choose from which one to email. So if there was more than one email field on here, I could choose in the here on the log a call, there's different phone numbers on the record. I can choose to call different or log a call for different numbers. But let's see what this would look like in person in the org. So if we look at what it would look like before this release, you see these are different tabs. But now we have the option of changing that with the dynamic activity composer. So this is done inside the Lightning page. And you'll see that when I click on this or uncheck this, use tabbed activity view, that's the old way. If I choose this to be unchecked, then it switches over to the buttons. So now let's see what the user's experience would be. Now you have buttons instead of those different tabs. Cleaner look. If there's more than one, for example, here there's only one call to log a call, but you could have different record types for events. You could have different email addresses in here. There's only one email on this lead, or different record types for tasks. But in here is a much more efficient use of adding activities by just clicking on a button. All right, last one. Have you ever wanted to organize reports and dashboards in a way that's different from the folders they reside in? Well, now you can with collections for reports and dashboards. You can use collections to organize the reports and dashboards that you care about, even if they exist in multiple different folders. So you can also add Lightning reports and dashboards, such as those those related to a project or commonly used for immediate access in this new unified home. You're also able to pin important collections to your homepage, hide irrelevant collections, share collections with others, and we'll talk about what a collection is in just a moment. This topic, though, really is all about this thing called the unified experience for analytics. The unified experience for analytics. So this will first require an admin to go to the reports and dashboard setting and select enable the unified experience for analytics home in setup. So I actually already did in this developer org, already just turned it on. Then you will navigate to the analytics home, which you can kind of see in this image right here.
Looks like Mark might have lost internet. Give him a second to come back. There we go.
This is the screen you'll see. So let's kind of take a look. Yes.
We lost you for a second and you're not sharing your screen anymore.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let's redo that.
There we go.
Am I back?
Yep.
Okay, so not sure where I got lost, but this collections for reports and dashboards requires the admin to turn it on. And once it's enabled, then a user just needs to navigate to the analytics tab, and that's where they'll see these screens. So rather than repeating this, I will go ahead and just show you what this looks like live. Okay, so once it's turned on, the users will have access to this analytics tab. And from within the analytics tab, that's where you'll see different collections. I have just one collection here that I actually set up to be pinned at the top, but I can create other collections. And you can set it up with a different color. This first one I had was blue. I can make this one green. And then within the collection, right, you can then add. If I want to switch between the different collections, I can just click on here. But if in this new collection here, I can add. Let's see. Say this report. So now this report is inside this collection. So it's a way of just organizing your reports in a way that, or dashboards in a way that's a little bit more user-friendly. From within the collection, you can, depending on the report, potentially have a preview. But if you just click on it, it'll take you into as though you're running the report. Right, and then also in the dropdown, you can also remove it from the collection. You can share it, and then if you share it, that will give this link that somebody else, once they have that URL, they can click on it. They're essentially running that report. So there's a whole bunch of features within the collection itself. What you just need to know is that now this is available to all Salesforce users by just enabling it. All right, assuming we're back on still, let's move on to the more administrator-focused features. So as an administrator, now you can view permission sets that have create, read, edit, and delete access on the field's object by selecting permission sets with object permissions when you assign field level security, create an object, or change a field. What this really means here is that if you enable this, you are now creating field level security on permission sets and not profiles. Why does that matter? Is because ultimately they will be moving to permissions being field level permissions being on permission sets and not on profile. So starting to use this now will get you ready for when the change actually does take place. So if you want to do it one way and then switch it back because you're kind of in transition, then you just need to unenable this feature. I'll show you where that feature is enabled. It's under the setup menu under user management settings, and that's where you actually just turn it on or turn it off. If it's turned on, then when you create a new field, you'll see that it's actually saying, hey, assign your field level security based on these permission sets. If it's not enabled, like here, this was disabled, you are still doing it the old way, which is on profiles. So let's take a look at how this would look. So I'm going to go to setup first, go to the area where this is turned on or turned off as an administrator, user management settings. Field level security for permission sets during field creation. So you can see how it's enabled now. So if I go in and create a new field, you can see how I'm now, these are the different permission sets that I can either give read or read and edit access to. There's not a lot of permission sets in this org, but you can see how when I'm establishing the field level security, it's asking me to do it by permission sets. Whereas if I didn't have that enabled, this is the way an administrator is used to seeing it today, which is by profile. So these are the profiles. So the difference here is now Salesforce wants you to start, because it's a better practice, establishing field level security on fields based on permission sets and their permission set groups, not profiles. But it's now kind of in beta, so we're in a transition period. So that's a permission set to display field level security. Moving on to the next topic. As you might have heard, not only are profiles and their field level security kind of changing over to permission sets, but also workflow rules and process builders are retiring. Yes, they were great in their time, but their time is coming to an end soon. And moving is never easy, but thanks to the hardworking people at Salesforce, there is a tool that will help transition to flow. This tool is not new because it did work already on workflow, but now it's also going to work on process builder processes. As you can see from the image above, the type includes not just workflow rules, but process builders as well. Let's take a look at how this easy to use tool works. So I'm going to go to setup and first show you that I have a process builder. This example process builder. What I want you to notice is that it only has one criteria. If I had multiple criteria on here, then it will potentially create for each criteria set a different flow. Okay, so just one process builder with one criteria, just remember that. And when we go back to this migration tool, it will show you all of your process builders and all your workflows. I just have the one in here. When I click on it and then click migrate to flow, you can see that it will list all of my criteria. This is the only criteria I have in there. And if I click on it and say, yep, I want to convert that one because it's migratable, this tool will be able to do it. When I click migrate, then it just reminds you, by the way, it's migrated, but you will still need to activate the new flow, and you probably should deactivate the process builder, right? You don't probably want both of them working. So let's look at what it created. So here is the example process builder flow, came from process builder. Notice how it's not active. And if I look at what it looks like inside, for each criteria, you're going to get your own flow. And then for each action within that criteria, that creates basically a step here. So this is what this one was doing is setting account rating to hot when the industry was education, I think, something like that. But you can see that it's a very easy process to move from process builder to flow. And it also gives you the ability to kind of pick and choose what you want to migrate. All right. So we've always known that we have field history tracking on objects, but now we also have it on events and tasks. When you turn on the field history tracking, you can track up to 6 fields so that sales reps can see what's changed on that event or task in the related tab for events and tasks. Field tracking history did have a limitation of 20 fields per object, but on these tasks and events, it's only 6. You can't, just like on the other objects, you can't track a formula field or a roll-up summary field. And if it's a text field that has more than 255 characters, you're really only tracking whether the field changed or not. You're not actually tracking the before and after images. But let's take a look at where this takes place. So on an object, say like account, you would click set history tracking, and you could choose up to 20. So if I were to choose, 22, it'd say, sorry, you can't do that. You only got 20. But now with events and tasks, whoops, gotta spell it. Let's see, event or task, you also can track history. And you can choose up to 6 of these. Actually, I should have done the 7th one. You can see that it would limit us. So it feels like the description and the recurrence pattern, which is on the event, those things are more than 255 characters. So it actually is only tracking the changes, not the old and new values. But you're only allowed to do 6, and that's on event or task. All right, moving towards the end. Picklist fields saw a lot of love in 2022 with multiple new features being released in beta, and these features will now be available in general release for spring 23. So there's really 3 guys here to show you. There is the bulk delete inactive picklist values. If it's a custom picklist field with predefined values, you can inactivate multiple or delete or replace multiple picklist fields at a time, or even delete unused values. So this it helps you save a lot of time, right? Because in the past, you would only be able to do one at a time, and it would take a few minutes, maybe sometimes, for it to actually finish. But now you can do them in bulk. So this is both on deleting, inactivating, replacing, all of those you'll see. And there's also some new fields for gender identity on things like contacts and leads for pronouns and gender identity. So let's take a look at these. So we go over to, say, for example, the contact object. There is my gender identity field that's been added as a standard field with values that you can add additional ones if you need to. And then there's also your pronouns. So those are just standard picklist fields that have added to a couple objects like contacts. And then if we look at this bulk capability, as I said, you do need to go to a picklist field, and it does need to be a custom one. So for example, level is a custom picklist field. Now you'll see this capability. So you have these checkboxes on the left. I could literally delete or deactivate or even replace multiple ones at the same time. If you're replacing more than one, then basically you got to make sure you have at least one left over. So for example, if I say, hey, these guys are going to be replaced by, there's got to at least be something to replace it by. All right, so that's the delete, deactivate, replace both up here. And then if you have multiple inactive values, you can just delete multiple ones at the same time. So all this is really doing is saving you time, because you can now do multiple things all within one, at one process. All right. And the last one that we have is you can now make lead and record pages more robust by configuring them with dynamic forms. Dynamic forms has been slowly being rolled out. It was already available for account, contact, personal account, opportunity, but now it's also going to be available for lead and contact, or cases, I'm sorry, cases. So how do you do that? Well, this is all done in the Lightning page layout. Let's take a look at how, this is a screenshot of what it is, but in essence, because of time, let's just dive into this. And I'm going to go over to a lead. Page, the record, the Lightning page. So we're in the Lightning app builder, and what I'm going to do, actually I have a tab already here. And let me remove this so you can see how what I did to build this. So I created a tab, and in this tab, I'm going to place a component. And the component, there's two ways to kind of do this. I'm going to first use over here where it says fields and components. I'm going to click on fields, and I'm going to add the fields section component. You can put this anywhere on the page, but the benefit of putting on its own tab is you can clearly see what I'm doing, right? It's not mixed in with anything else on the page. All right, so now I can take these fields right here and start to add them in any of this section, right? These, it does even break it down to say, by the way, these are the required fields. So let's just put in a couple things here. Oops, already got a revenue. Okay, and then the power of this, as you can see, is I'm literally building the page where I want, but I can also make it dynamic. So for example, I can say if the annual revenue, I'm sorry, the description, I'm going to say description is required if the annual revenue, meaning they have to, that field will display if the annual revenue is greater than 10,000, or let's make it 1 million, right? So now by having this field be a certain value, that would cause this field to show up on the page layout. Okay. Yeah, let's just put it on there. Whoops. I thought that was not a detail, but let's just put that there. It must not have saved, or yeah, well, or did I not get this high enough? There we go. I didn't have it high enough. So there is now this description field is showing up because this has a value. So what you're really showing here is the ability to make fields dependent on other fields with this this component visibility, but you're able to break up the page layout into different components because each field could be its own component. There's a second way of doing this, and I'll just finish with this, by literally using Salesforce's power to start from scratch and build the whole thing dynamic. So here you saw that I literally built it field by field. There's a second way of doing this, which is I could, for example, add the record detail component. I'm just going to put it somewhere here. And then within this component, I can now cause it to split this up into all kinds of dynamic based on an existing field layout or page layout. And so now the entire thing has been created as components, and I can now drag them wherever I want. So in other words, if you were building a screen from scratch, probably the best thing to do is to take a page layout, use it, using the record detail, migrate it so that it breaks everything into its own separate movable component, and then rebuild the page, the lightning page, the way you want. If you're just doing kind of one-off, then it's probably easier to use field sections. Right. So all of this stuff gives you way more power to influence the user experience in a way that makes them more engaged and happier using Salesforce. All right, so our last polling question is, which feature do you think is the best of the 10 that I just showed you? Or which is the one that you are most likely to use? Which one are you most excited to try out? All right, and let's see. Import context leads a guided experience. Okay, one person there. Dynamic forms for leads and cases. Yes, that's a really fun one to use. And the personalized report filters is the winner, but all of them really are very useful. And I encourage you to kind of get a developer org and start playing around with them and seeing which ones you would want to either as an administrator roll out, or as a user, encourage your administrator to enable. Some of them, as you know, obviously would already be enabled, because like going from 7 to 10 reports and dashboards subscription, that one doesn't require anything to be turned on. All right, I'll turn this stage over to Turner and talk about other Salesforce virtual classes we have.
Cool, thanks, Mark. So yeah, just a reminder that Armanino does have Salesforce virtual classes through our Armanino Academy. The link will be provided in this deck when you receive it, but you will receive, but the topics range all the way from CPQ to Sales Cloud to Service Cloud, and even just basic admin training. So it's something worth checking out.
All right, so thank you very much for attending. Have a great rest of your week. Alexandria, I will let you kind of finish up with, or Turner and I will stay on for additional questions.
Well, thanks, Mark. I think that wraps up our presentation. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and remember to complete the survey as you close out of the webinar. Have a good day.